My name is Jasmin, I'm 28, I'm from the US, and I'm Ghanaian, Syrian, and Lebanese. So my mom's family is predominantly Ghanaian, that's where she grew up, and she was raised by her mom in Ghana. Her dad is Lebanese and Syrian, so I would say on that side of her family, not much was passed down. From my grandmother, the stories that would be passed down would more be in passing. There wasn't really that much of a dialogue, I would say, between something that you would really hear from a family member was more of, this is what your great-grandmother did, this is what your great-grandfather did. I would say at home, I always felt Ghanaian when I was a kid. But I think that's also because, my parents would speak to us in Tree, so one of the languages that they speak in Ghana. We'd always have Ghanaian food. Without thinking about it, I always felt very attached to my culture. My parents were also very okay with us creating our identity around what we wanted it to be. So it wasn't something that they ever forced onto us. It wasn't ever something that they kind of told us, oh, you have to like this because we're from here, or you have to like this because you were born in the US. It was never like that. But I know that my parents did also want to make it easier for us being, Africans born in the US, because I think that also comes with its own type of hardships. When I go to school, and this is in the US, I feel American because everybody around me is American in their own way. And then when I'm home, I still feel American, but then my parents will speak to me in Tree. So it was a little bit of a kind of like a blend of both cultures in that way. But then when I started to go to boarding school, I was in Switzerland for 5 years, from 9 to 14. I would say that is kind of where things changed. I think I was very lucky to be in an international school because there were a lot of different nationalities. I wasn't the only ethnic kid at that school. And I would say everybody kind of supported the fact that people came from different countries and experienced very different things in those countries. And I think when you grow up in an environment like that, especially outside of your home country and outside of your normality, and I guess how you choose to identify, it helps to have kids that are in the same situation. But I would say in my second boarding school, that was when this idea of feeling different really was inset into me. Because in that school, it wasn't really an international school. You had a very, very, very low number of diversity. And I think as a kid, when you see that there is something against you, for whatever reason, you, I guess, try to do the opposite of that to make sure that you can cope with whatever has to come. So I would say in that time, I was just American. I didn't want to talk about my heritage. I didn't want to get into this whole thing of being the kid that's different. But I think already when you're considered the kid that's different and you're Black, it's like, oh, this is even worse, right? And then you're African, it's even worse. And I think because I realized, okay, it's easier to be one and not the other, it made sense at the time, but when I look back at that time now, I kind of realized that actually there was a huge part of myself that I had to suppress in order to survive. And I think when you're dealt with this really young, you know how to adapt really well, and you kind of know how to switch on and off these parts of you that people like and dislike. But I think as a kid, you want to be liked. You want people to not treat you differently. When I started to meet other people from, for example, West Africa, who were very rooted in their identity, very rooted in their culture, very rooted in what it is for them to be, for example, Ghanaian, it was not the same as what it was for me to be Ghanaian. And I think because I grew up morphed into these very different cultures, but I then had my parents kind of say, identify in the way that you want, which I'm very, very lucky for, there's a huge clash. And I remember there were so many times where I would maybe call my parents and say, people are kind of making me not feel very Ghanaian. and they're kind of making me feel a little weird about the fact that I identify with the country so much. And I think because of it, I felt like I had to work that much harder to be accepted, because I kind of told myself, well, if I can't be accepted by these people, then who accepts me, right? And who's going to make me feel at home? And obviously, kind of like I said, I have always felt American in that way. I've always felt Ghanaian, and I've always identified to my identity in a different way. If my parents left Ghana and immigrated to the US at one point, they had their reasons. And I think if they had their reasons for moving, it's also because they wanted to give me and my siblings different opportunities and to have, I would say in different ways, the life that they didn't get to have in Ghana. And it's unfortunate because I think when you grow up in these different environments and you're already oppressed for different reasons, you at many times can have, I would say, a feeling of you would idolize these countries. They had to struggle a lot to get to where they are today. And so I think because of that, it has kind of made me realize, okay, it's important to understand your history and understand the history of these countries and not turn a blind eye to some of the things that they do, because you shouldn't. And I think also, as I would say, children of immigrants, it's also, I would say, our duty to remember these things, accept the fact that this happened, and make sure that we also understand the reasons why our parents maybe sacrificed for us in their home countries so that we could also have a better life. I would want there to always be an open type of dialogue, even if it's things that I don't know about, that's okay. Even if it's stuff that I don't like, that's okay. I think that's a really big part of also understanding, is being able to ask these questions, and if somebody can't answer you about them, then that's okay. You can figure them out either on your own or the other people, but at least being able to talk about these things, I think that's a big one for me.